It was sesame tahini.
It was tahini.
Yeah, sesame tahini.
Yeah. I can't believe you thought that tasted like peanut butter.
I have to do it again. I thought it did. I was like, it definitely is so much as peanut butter.
Well, don't do it again if it blew your lip up. She had an anaphylactic reaction to it. Maybe I should try it again. Don't.
That's the only thing I ate. I can't think of anything else that I ate there that I never eat. And it was all like legit food.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. I have an EpiPen. I'm going to give it another go. That's really not a good plan. I am not a proponent of the reintroduction of something that you had an anaphylactic reaction to this week. I'm just saying. I mean, maybe after years, like, I wonder if anything has changed in my physiology, but I'm going to say 2 days is not enough time. I feel like we're hiding. This is good. I got you both. Okay. All right. Actually, I'm going to spit my gum out.
I realize as I'm editing.
Can you tell us about the chew gum at the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will. So I've been editing these videos and getting all the so's and ums and false starts and everything out. And I realized how chewy I am. I'm like, I am such a gum chewer. So I decided I would make a rule that I wasn't allowed to chew gum tonight. I'm tiny on the screen anyway, so it's hardly noticeable. Welcome to week 4. We're going to talk about reintroduction tonight of your food. So you might not necessarily be at the point where you're ready to reintroduce the foods, because most of us started on a Wednesday. Our first meeting was on a Wednesday, but likely you didn't start until the following weekend or even the following Monday. So if that was the case, you're going to want to wait until the day that you started in this upcoming week to begin your reintroduction, if you choose to do your reintroduction now. If you have never rebooted before, so you haven't ever done your reintroductions before, you really do want to get your answers. So some people say, well, I want to stay on this for a much longer time. I'm liking it a lot, and I'm not ready to reintroduce, and that's perfectly fine. However, before you get to the point where, it's 3 more weeks of reboot and everything is great, and you end up at a party, or it's Halloween, or it's Thanksgiving, or whatever, you want to have your reintroductions done so that you can get your answers. You've done a lot of work to find out if you're lactose intolerant or gluten intolerant, and you want to get those answers out of this program. So I recommend really taking a look at your schedule of what's coming up if you don't intend to reintroduce the foods this coming week, and plan when you're going to do it to get the full reintroduction done safely. And then you can easily do your reintroduction and then take them right back out, but get your answers. So look at that. That's exactly what that slide says. So you're almost there. Don't stop now. You've done all this hard work, and it's important to get your answers. So during reboot, we were trying to find out, are you gluten intolerant? Are you lactose intolerant? And we're also going to take a look at, could you possibly be allergic to the protein in milk? So if you have a problem, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but if you have a problem with dairy when you reintroduce, we're going to be asking 2 questions. Is it lactose intolerance, or is it an allergy to the protein? So lactose is the sugar. That would be an intolerance. But some people actually have made it into adulthood and not realize that they actually had an allergy to the protein. I've had probably just a small handful of people, but the reintroduction is a little bit more profound with an allergy than with an intolerance typically. And then all of us are, remember, intolerant to sugar. So I'm hoping that you will keep those things out. And I also said any omega-6 foods, so your GMO oils. So this week we're going to add back in, or this coming week, we're going to add these things back in a particular order, but I'm hoping that you will avoid the GMO oils or GMOs altogether, and your right spin sugars for life. So on day 1 of reintroduction, whether that's this coming week or a week or 2 down the road, what I want you to do is familiarize yourself with the symptoms of the item that you're going to be reintroducing. The first item to reintroduce is lactose. And I do have some people that say, well, I already know I'm lactose intolerant. I don't want to test it because I don't want to go there. However, I'd still like you to give it a shot, even though, unless you know you're allergic to the protein, and then don't. But if you think you're lactose intolerant, you may actually not be. You might be gluten intolerant. And when you're consuming gluten, it takes your ability to hold lactase, which is the digestive enzyme for lactose. It takes your body's ability to hold that where it needs to be for you to digest lactose. So if you've already got gluten out of your system, your lactase may be hanging out there on your cilia and your bowels ready to digest lactose. So I've had a number of people, myself included, who had thought they were lactose intolerant, and by getting gluten out, they find out, nope, not lactose intolerant, but yes, I am gluten intolerant, which we'll find out next. So I'm going to send you the instructions on how to do this so you don't have to take frantic notes on how to do the reintroduction. But again, so the first thing that you're going to do is familiarize yourself with the common symptoms, and those are actually in your book. The common symptoms for lactose are over 200, so you don't have to memorize the list, just in general, what you might experience. What I like to have people do is take a look at what you're feeling like right now, as far as, since I started rebooting, I have a lot more energy. I don't have the slumps in the afternoon, or my eczema went away, or I'm not having migraines, or my blood pressure went down, or any of the things that have changed for you during reboot, even if they aren't one of the typical symptoms of lactose or the other things that we're going to add back in, just so you can mark the change. Okay. So when you actually are ready to do your reintroduction, you're familiarized yourself with the symptoms, you've familiarized yourself with how you're feeling since you've started rebooting. What you're going to do is, on day 1 of reintroduction, you're going to have 1 serving of a lactose containing dairy product. So I say lactose containing because people are like, can I have yogurt? And well, yogurt has digestive enzymes in there that have digested some of that lactose already. Plus most people want yogurt that's sweetened, so that would be a no anyway. But yogurt wouldn't be a good heavy dose of lactose. A hard cheese is also not a heavy dose of lactose. So cheddar cheese, Parmesan cheese, they have almost no lactose at all, which is good news. If you are lactose intolerant, you may still be able to eat them after reboot is over and all of that. So you want to choose something more like cottage cheese or mozzarella cheese or milk, if you're a milk drinker. Remember, rules still apply for all of those, the GMOs. So I would hope that you've made the decision that you're not eating GMO foods, so don't have GMO milk or GMO cheese. So find yourself grass-fed or organic versions of them to test. So when you have chosen your thing that it is going to be that you're going to have as your first serving, you can do it at breakfast or at lunch, but do it earlier in the day. Don't wait until dinner time, because I want you to have a long time to see how it's how you're doing with it. And one thing I should say is that if you started on a Monday, you might still want to do your first reintroduction on Sunday and stop rebooting, or start your reintroduction one day early, just because the symptoms that you could experience with lactose intolerance could put you in the bathroom for a little period of time. That would be less fun at work. So if you work on Monday, you might want to do that on Sunday. And if it's going to be that profound, it'll usually be that first serving that you have. So before you take your first bite of whatever it is that you've chosen, take a general look at or check in with your body. And the first thing that I really like to have people do, bless you, is check in with what your mucosal pattern is. So like, is your throat dry? Do you already have a frog in your throat? Do you have a little bit of a runny nose? Is it a dry nose? Is it a stuffy nose? So the mucus pattern that you've got going on right now, just kind of take note. Within minutes or within seconds of taking that first bite, reassess the mucosal situation and see if it's changed at all. Some people will immediately have a little bit of like, I do have a little frog in my throat now, or a little light runny nose. That's a very common first symptom of, yep, there's something up with this. Not always, but often. That would be very subtle. Then, over the course of, you're going to be watching yourself over the course of the next 24 hours, but really checking in with yourself initially, like, how's my belly for the first maybe hour to 2 hours. That's when the abdominal symptoms will typically begin, is within some people within minutes, some people within that 1 to 2 hour span of time, where if you are lactose intolerant, it's probably going to either make you nauseous or send you to the bathroom. And then as the day wears on, hours have passed, how's your energy? Do you have a headache? Blah, blah, blah. So if everything is awesome, day 2, you're going to have 2 servings of dairy. And let me back up. If everything wasn't awesome, test over. If you had your first slice of cheese and it sent you to the bathroom for 3 hours, you are lactose intolerant and don't test any further. But do get in touch with me, because I would want to just do a quick test with you for the casein or whey allergy. And I won't really go into how to test for that, because it is so uncommon for people to not know that they have an allergy. But if you have a problem, just get in touch and we'll go into how to do that. So if you did have a symptom, you're going to stop your test. You're going to wait 24 hours or until all of the symptoms have subsided and you feel fabulous again before you reintroduce your next food. If you had no problem, day 2, it's 2 servings. So same thing, maybe breakfast and lunch. Or in this case, you could do lunch and dinner if you're really not a breakfast dairy kind of person. That will become more of a problem with gluten than with dairy. But so day 2, 2 servings, watching for the same things. And day 3, 3 servings, and again, watching for the same things. You probably do not have any problem with lactose if at the end of day 3, you've really got no symptoms going on. So if you have absolutely nothing wrong at the end of day 3, you're not lactose intolerant, congratulations, but you might want to do that test again later on in life, because we all have a finite amount of the digestive enzyme lactase. So if you're a big dairy consumer, eventually you'll run out of lactase at some point in your life. So if you're not lactose intolerant now and you keep consuming lactose, eventually, in theory, you should become lactose intolerant. If you had like a really minor symptom, you're like, I can handle that. It was just a little tickle in my throat, or I just feel a little bit bloated. Like, it's not that big of a, although most people don't like that bloated feeling. That's one of the best things about Reboot is, wow, I'm not bloated at all. And people are like, that first week, they're like, I have only lost like 1 pound, but I feel like I've lost 6 inches. So that bloat feeling usually will come back with an intolerance. If you even have just that minor symptom that you feel like you can handle, remember, anytime you're consuming anything that is inflammatory to you, and that would mean you've got a little symptom, it is inflammatory to you, and you can, if you keep consuming it, you're causing that long-term inflammatory change, which leads to disease processes that you don't want. So that doesn't mean that if it was a mild symptom, you can never have it, but it means you really should limit it and not consume it daily, because you just don't want to keep that inflammation in your body, because it causes problems. And you might find that if you do keep it in and that symptom is mild, or that arthritis that you had that has gone away during Reboot 3 weeks later resurfaces, or eczema that was gone during Reboot, it might take a little while longer for those really long-term symptoms to resurface. So days 2 and 3, like I said, you're gonna add in the other things. If you've had a lactose problem, you waited your 24 hours, test over. In theory, on day 2, you could test gluten. If you had no problem with lactose, you're now on day 4, and it's time to test gluten. Again, you're going to familiarize yourself with the symptoms of gluten. They're very similar to the symptoms of lactose. And there, again, is over 200 things. You're going to do the same exact thing. You're going to take a look at your mucosal pattern. How are things? How are things after your first bite? Blah, blah, blah. You can have lactose still if you want to, while if you had no problem with it, you can keep your lactose in and start testing gluten. Or if you're somebody that wants to continue rebooting, or you're just like, I really just don't want this in my life, take the lactose back out and start the gluten. But you can, if you had no problem, consume them together, and it shouldn't skew the test results. So gluten-containing things are sometimes difficult to find that aren't going to have other things in them, like sugar, for example, because most breads, in order to rise, in order to make the yeast active, it takes a sugar of some sort. So most breads and bagels or anything like that I know most people want to have toast or a bagel for breakfast. If you can find one that doesn't have sugar, then go ahead. But I've not found one, but I haven't really looked for a reintroduction to reboot friendly bagel. So it might exist if you want to. Pasta is the best thing for reintroduction because it's straight up wheat, and it's a big shot of wheat. Pizza, if lactose was no problem, pizza would be a good way to reintroduce too. Again, trying to find a pizza crust that doesn't have sugar. That is more possible, much more possible to find a pizza crust that doesn't have sugar than it is to find a bread or a bagel. So you might, be making your own pizza to not be adding sugar, because really even a little tiny bit of sugar at this point is going to mess up your test results, because sugar, you've had it out for so long. And when you test sugar, which I will have you do, most people have, or a lot of people have a very immediate reaction to it. So it will screw up your test, even if it's just that tiny bit to rise the bread or the pizza crust. So if you find a pizza crust and you want to have pizza and lactose is good, that's awesome. Enjoy it, because if you're gluten intolerant, it might be the last pizza you have. Well, the last gluten-containing pizza you have. So same thing, day 1 serving of pasta, of gluten, day 2 servings, day 3 servings, and just keeping an eye on your symptoms. If by the end of day 3 you don't have any symptoms, congratulations, you are not gluten intolerant either. And now the decisions that you make in life are just to eat clean, but you can eat clean products that contain gluten or lactose. So that's awesome. I keep forgetting to change my slide. So sugar, I do want you to retest, even though I never want you to have it again afterwards. But I want you to test it because it can be such a fast and horrible reaction that people have to sugar. It'll really solidify what I've been talking about. Some people will have an immediate hot flash, sweat head to toe within minutes. Some people get a headache within minutes. Some people need a nap within 10 minutes. A lot of people's joint pain will come back within an hour. All kinds of things happen when you add sugar back in and you haven't had it. So it's not necessarily something that you were aware of before, but it's like you didn't know you felt so good or so bad until you feel so good. And it really can be really profound. And then don't do it again. If you don't have any symptoms when you add sugar back in, that doesn't give you the green light. It's still causing problems. It just means that it won't be as fun of a test for me to have had you do. I really enjoy when people have a horrible reaction to sugar. I'm like, I told you. So anyway, when you test sugar, pick something that you've really been wanting that hopefully you will never eat again. Like if it was a Reese's peanut butter cup, or if it was a whoopie pie, if you didn't have a lactose thing, like make it your thing. If you really, really, really don't want to like open that can of worms, like if you're like, if I eat a whoopie pie, I'm going to go right back into all my old habits, then have a little piece of hard candy. That's not going to like really change your life all that dramatically, but do test it. Again, notice how you feel. The sugar won't likely give you the runny nose, the mucosal pattern thing, but it really can cause all kinds of like just really usually quite immediate reactions. Mm-hmm.
So doing the sugar test, do we have to be sure that we're getting cane sugar versus high fructose corn syrup?
No, actually, just make sure that you're getting sugar, not like an artificial sugar and not a left spinning sugar, because honey shouldn't do this to you. Maple syrup shouldn't do this to you. They will still spike your blood sugar, unlike the whole fruit, or it'll just, they work with your body differently, but those left spin sugars are not going to cause an inflammatory reaction. But yeah, corn syrup will cause that same inflammation. And most candies, if you choose candy, have both anyway. So it's great. So yeah. Yeah, it's an easier way to test all of it at once. So that's it on adding sugar back in. After you have your lactose in, your gluten back in, you've tested your sugar once and never done it again, then everything else can come back. So if you've been the person that's been dying for a cup of coffee or a glass of red wine or whatever it is, that can happen on that day 7 after you've tested your sugar. Beef and pork, again, you can go ahead and bring those back in. You can even do it that day if you want, after you've got everything tested. Just keeping in mind that they do take 7 days to digest, so that is going to make your body more sluggish. So if you're someone that's going to eat clean and not stay on Reboot, really to eat clean, you can eat grass-fed or organic beef. If you can find organic pork, it's really difficult to find organic pork because pigs eat lousy food typically. They eat everything. But just keeping in mind that that's going to slow your system down a lot. So if you're eating really, really well, you're eating really, really clean, but you're starting to gain weight again, you got to look at how long is it taking your body to get this stuff through. You may want to, back off, because I know, a lot of people that during Reboot is the first time that they haven't had meat 5 nights a week, and the chicken and the fish and the eggs, although they are, that animal protein, they move through much faster. So just something to take a look at. So once sugars are back in, if you do want to, the left spin sugars are back in, if you do want to sweeten some things with easier than pureeing dates or mashing bananas, again, the organic blackstrap molasses, real maple syrup, preferably raw local honey, but just real honey. Those are all good options for sweeteners and do bring nutritional value to the table in and of themselves as well. Just don't get too carried away with them, because they will start your whole, like, this is easy, I'll have more of that in my coffee, or whatever the case may be, to start those problems back up for you. And I did want to say that some people like the 0-calorie sweeteners, and stevia and xylitol are okay sweeteners for 0-calorie sweeteners, as long as they are organic, actually just stevia, or actually organic birch xylitol. So xylitol, they're deriving from GMO corn now, and like Truvia, which is the majorly sold version of stevia in the grocery store, undergoes 32 chemical processes between the time that it was the stevia leaf and it's into that packet. So it's no better than aspartame. So I personally don't like stevia anyway, but if you are going to want a 0-calorie sweetener, it's perfectly fine to bring those back in, as long as you're getting good quality, because you just don't want it. Otherwise, you're eating all the chemicals that you would have been eating, otherwise thinking you're doing well, and you're really not. So finding products that are sweetened with stevia, like Life Water or whatever, it's not organic. So as long as it's organic, you should be all right. What were you just going to ask, Lenny?
Well, you pretty much just covered it.
Oh, all right.
I was reading the thing behind.
I was psychic, or not quite psychic. So staying on track, you know how to eat healthy. You've learned a lot during reboot. It's really easy to eat clean after you've rebooted. It's really easy to just add a few things back in that you've been wanting, and this becomes a lifestyle. It's not a diet. And I try to, to teach that to people, that this is not something that you do for 21 or 28 days or even 3 months and lose the weight that you wanted to lose and then go back to everything that you were doing before. It's an education that hopefully will have you eating healthy for life, and you can not be a statistic, which is awesome. However, it happens that life creeps back in, and oops, those whoopie pies over the holidays did get me sucked back into all those bad things. So I offer reboots several times a year. It's easier to do it with a group than it is to do it on your own. So I always have all of my previous rebooters are welcome to join anytime for $10, anytime that I'm doing it. So for life, just so that you can stay on track. And please invite family and friends when you come back. So there's a questionnaire in the back of your reboot book, and actually I think that it's in the front and the back. I think I put 2 in this book. And it's a pretty cool little questionnaire. It's called the weight gain or weight regain questionnaire. So if you're 4 months from now, you're really finding yourself off track and I'm not offering a reboot and you don't want to do it on your own or whatever, take a look at the questionnaire. And it's fun to just fill out anyway. Like, some people like to look at it and say, what was my number? So what you do with that questionnaire is you give yourself a check mark for everything that you answer yes to. And at the bottom, the questions are like a double negative. So be careful if you're answering yes to the right thing. Like, do you eat less than a certain amount of vegetables a day? That's a yes. It's not like, do you eat vegetables? But anyway, for every check mark that you have given yourself, give yourself 1 point. So it's fun sometimes to look at that and say, what was my number before I rebooted? And then what is my number while I'm rebooting? But down the road, what is my number now? Well, I'm starting to have problems with weight's creeping back on, or if you were continuing to lose weight, now that stopped. Like, take a look at this and see if you can identify why by giving yourself a number. So the numbers, if you are between 0 and 3, you are likely to be losing weight. You're eating super clean. You're doing a great job. And you are likely to be losing weight. If you're between a 4 and a 7, you're likely to still be doing a pretty good job, likely to be maintaining your weight, maybe even still losing at the 4. If you're between a 7 and, this is off the top of my head, between a 7 and a 12, I believe, you're likely to start putting weight back on. And anything over a 12, and you have a high likelihood of regaining weight or gaining more weight if it wasn't weight regain, but you're just going in the wrong direction. The cool thing about the questionnaire is, let's just say that you have 3 things. So you want to be in that 0 to 3 and losing weight, right? And you have 3 things that you really want to have in your life that are on that list. Make those your 3, right? If you're like, well, I want to have a glass of wine and I want to eat less than 2 pieces of fruit and I want to, whatever they are, make those your 3 things. And you can change them week to week. They don't always have to be the same 3. I wouldn't change them day to day. I think that would confuse your body and whatnot. But if you want to make these your good habits and these are your 3 bad habits or whatever, they shouldn't really cause you very much problem. If you find that your number has gotten really high, and again, you're like, I don't want to reboot, or she's not doing reboot right now, and I can't do it without the group, and your number is like a 14, work at it slowly. Go through that list of 14 and be like, okay, this week I'm tackling 5. These 5 things are not going to happen anymore. Now your number's a 9. Next week I'm tackling these 5. Now your number's a 4. Now you're back in safe zone or almost weight loss zone, right? So it makes it a little bit easier to, you can set yourself a goal that way and get back on track. And that is the end of Reboot. Does anybody have any questions? Nothing? Oh, the gum. I was going to cover the gum. So I chew, I'm going to show it. Xyla-Chew, which is xylitol gum. It's non-GMO. It's no soy, no anything bad, and it's sweetened with xylitol. So it is a. I'm a gum chewer, and I used to chew Orbit, and I was very addicted to it and didn't realize it. I chew gum constantly. As a matter of fact, I used to sleep with it in my mouth. I don't do that as often anymore, although still occasionally I do. But I didn't realize that I was addicted to the aspartame in regular gum. And what most people don't realize, I was like, well, maybe sugar isn't as bad as aspartame, because aspartame is such a toxic chemical. So trying to get aspartame out of my life but keep gum in, I was like, I'll choose sugar gum and brush my teeth 25 times a day, and bummer I'm getting sugar, but it's better than aspartame, right? Regular gum has sugar and aspartame. So if you buy Juicy Fruit or Bubble Yum or any of those gums for your kids thinking that they're getting sugar instead of aspartame, they're getting them both. So anyway, the Xylachew, there are not very many xylitol gums, but of the xylitol gums that there are, this one is best. And I definitely did that comparative study. So they don't last very long before they have less flavor and they get hard, so they don't chew like a good gum. This one is the closest to Orbit, but it did take a while for me to believe that to be true. But now I believe it to be true, and it's become okay for me. And aspartame, so it really was interesting. When I went off of Orbit gum, I had a headache, like a major headache, and I don't get headaches. It was definitely related to the gum. And when I thought back to, there were a couple of times that I would run out of gum, and I would sometimes get just like this dull headache, and I was like, that must have been like, because sometimes you run out of gum. And again, I have this in my mouth at night. I never had a time where my body went without aspartame, and if I ran out of gum, I mean, there were times where I was like, will you go down to Cumberland Farms at 11 o'clock at night to get me gum? That's kind of ridiculous, right? But yeah, so it actually is an addiction. And when you think of it that way, like, aspartame is in a lot of foods, so it's definitely to be avoided for your health, but it's addictive. So
That's interesting, because
Yeah.
Joshua last year and the previous year could have gum in plastic concentrate. So I would buy BJ's giant packs of Orbit gum.
Yep.
And now he's always asking for gum, like, all the time.
And hasn't he been having headaches?
Really bad headaches.
Get him off of it.
I gotta buy
Yeah.
that.
So, and I like the peppermint, the blue one, and the spearmint, the green one, but they have other flavors. They have one that tastes like Juicy Fruit. They have a licorice one. They have a really interesting one that's like a lemon and herb or basil or something like a lemon basil. They have a lot of interesting flavors. It's not inexpensive, but I'll link that on my website too. I'll do that tonight. I'll link it. You can buy it on Amazon. So, and I'm sure you can get it at Whole Foods or Lois's or whatever, but I just order mine online. And once you know you like it, I don't buy a container. I buy a case of 4 because it's less expensive. And I still do chew a lot of gum.
Yeah, but no.
Yeah. I know, right? Like, how many pieces have I had tonight? But yeah. All right. Anybody else? No? All right.
And just, are the 3 of you all doing this for the first time?
No, I've done it before.
You've done it before,
It's
yeah.
my first time.
Yeah, it totally did, it just like you were